Section 2. The motivation and process of the fall. The motivation of the human fall lay within the angel, who, as we have seen, is symbolized by the serpent who tempted Eve. Therefore, before we can know the motivation and the process of the fall, we must first learn about the angel. 2.1. Angels, their missions, and their relationship to human beings. Like all beings, angels were created by God. God created them prior to any other creation. In the biblical account of the creation of heaven and earth, we find that God spoke in the plural, "Let us make man in our image, after our likeness." This is not because God was referring to himself as the Holy Trinity, as many theologians have interpreted the passage. Rather, he was speaking to the angels, whom he had created before human beings. God created angels to be his retainers who would assist him in creating and sustaining the universe. In the Bible, we find many instances of angels working for the will of God. Angels conveyed to Abraham important words of God's blessings. An angel heralded the conception of Christ. An angel unchained Peter and led him out of prison and into the city. The angel who escorts John in the book of Revelation calls himself a servant, and in Hebrews, angels are referred to as ministering spirits. The Bible often portrays angels honoring and praising God. Let us investigate the relationship between human beings and angels from the perspective of the principle of creation. Because God created us as his children and gave us dominion over all creation, we are meant to rule over the angels as well. It is written in the Bible that we have the authority to judge the angels. Many who communicate with the spirit world have witnessed hosts of angels escorting the saints in paradise. These observations illustrate the fact that angels have the mission to minister to human beings. 2.2. The spiritual fall and the physical fall. God created human beings with two components, the spirit self and the physical self. The human fall likewise took place in two dimensions, the spiritual and the physical. The fall which took place through the sexual relationship between the angel and Eve was a spiritual fall, while the fall which occurred through the sexual relationship between Eve and Adam was a physical fall. How can an act of passionate love be consummated between an angel and a human being? All the emotions and sensations felt between a person and spirit are exactly the same as those felt during contact between two earthly people. Undoubtedly, a sexual relationship between an angel and a person is possible. We can understand this more clearly from the following evidence. These are reported cases of earthly people leading a married life with spirits. In the Bible, we have the account of an angel who wrestled with Jacob and put his thigh out of joint. 3 angels visited Abraham's family and ate a meal of veal, milk, and curds. Moreover, 2 angels visited the house of Lot and ate the unleavened bread he served them. When the townspeople saw the angels, they were excited with lecherous desires for them and surrounded Lot's house, shouting, "Where are the men who came to you tonight? Bring them out to us, that we may know them." 2.2.1. The spiritual fall. God created the angelic world and assigned Lucifer to the position of archangel. Lucifer was a channel of God's love to the angelic world, just as Abraham was a channel of God's blessing to the Israelites. In this position, he virtually monopolized the love of God. However, after God created human beings as his children, he loved them many more times than he had ever loved Lucifer, whom he had created as his servant. In truth, God's love toward Lucifer did not change. It was the same before and after the creation of human beings. Yet, when Lucifer saw that God loved Adam and Eve more than him, he felt as if there had been a decrease in the love he received from God. This situation is similar to that in the biblical parable of the laborers in the vineyard. Although the laborers who had worked since morning received a fair wage, when they saw that those who came later and worked less received just as much, they felt underpaid. Lucifer, feeling as though he were receiving less love than he deserved, wanted to grasp the same central position in human society as he enjoyed in the angelic world, as a channel of God's love. This is why he seduced Eve, and this was the motivation of the spiritual fall. Everything in the universe is created to be governed by God through love. Thus, love is the source of life, the key to happiness, and the essence of the ideal to which all beings aspire. The more one receives love, the more beautiful one appears to others. When the angel, created as God's servant, beheld Eve, daughter of God, it was only natural that she looked beautiful in his eyes. Moreover, when Lucifer saw that Eve was responding to his temptation, the angel felt the stimulation of her love to be deliciously enticing. At this point, Lucifer was seducing Eve with the mind to have her, regardless of the consequences. Lucifer, who left his proper position due to his excessive desire, and Eve, who wanted to open her eyes and become like God before the time was ripe, formed a common base and began give and take action. The power of the unprincipled love generated by their give and take led them to consummate an illicit sexual relationship on the spiritual plane. All beings are created based on the principle that when they become one in love, they exchange elements with each other. Accordingly, when Eve became one with Lucifer through love, she received certain elements from him. First, she received feelings of dread arising from the pangs of a guilty conscience, stemming from her violation of the purpose of creation. Second, she received from Lucifer the wisdom which enabled her to discern that her originally intended spouse was to be Adam, not the angel. Eve was in the position to receive wisdom from the archangel because she was immature, and her wisdom was not as seasoned as that of the archangel, who was already in a state of angelic maturity. 2.2.2 The Physical Fall. Perfect Adam and Eve were supposed to have become an eternal husband and wife in God's love. But Eve, who in her immaturity had engaged in the illicit relationship with the archangel, joined with Adam as husband and wife. Thus, Adam fell when he too was still immature. This untimely conjugal relationship in satanic love between Adam and Eve constituted the physical fall. As mentioned above, through the spiritual fall with the archangel, Eve received feelings of dread arising from the pangs of a guilty conscience and knew wisdom that her originally intended spouse was not the archangel but Adam. Eve then seduced Adam with the hope that by uniting with him, her intended spouse, she could rid herself of the dread and once again stand before God. This was Eve's motivation which led to the physical fall. Once Eve had united with the archangel through their illicit sexual relationship, she stood in the position of the archangel with respect to Adam. Thus Adam, who was still receiving God's love, appeared very attractive to her. Seeing Adam as her only hope of returning to God, Eve turned to Adam and tempted him, playing the same role as the archangel had played when he had tempted her. Adam responded and formed a common base with Eve, and they began give and take action with each other. The power of the unprincipled love generated in the relationship induced Adam to abandon his original position and brought them together in an illicit physical relationship of sexual love. When Adam united in oneness with Eve, he inherited all the elements Eve had received from the archangel. These elements in turn have been passed down to all subsequent generations without interruption. What if Adam had reached perfection without having yielded to fallen Eve's temptation? The providence to restore Eve would have been relatively easy because although she had fallen, Adam still would have remained intact as a perfect subject partner. Unfortunately, Adam also fell, and humanity has multiplied in sin to the present day, perpetuating the lineage of Satan. Section 3. The power of love, the power of the principle, and God's commandment. 3.1. The power of love and the power of the principle in the human fall. Human beings are created through the principle, and they are meant to live according to the way of the principle. Therefore, it cannot be that the force inherent in the principle would induce a person to deviate from the way of the principle and cause him to fall. This may be compared to a train which cannot run off the track unless, aside from a breakdown in the track or locomotive, some outside force stronger than the train's forward momentum collides with it and pushes it in a different direction. Similarly, for human beings, the force inherent in the principle guides their growth in the proper direction. But if some stronger force from a different direction and with an unprincipled purpose collides with them, they will surely fall. The force, which is stronger than the force of the principle, is none other than the power of love. While human beings are in the state of immaturity, it is possible that the power of unprincipled love can induce them to fall. Why is the power of love stronger than the power of the principle? Why did God create it stronger when this leaves open the possibility that the power of deviant love might collide with a person in the state of immaturity and cause him to fall? According to the principle of creation, God's love is the subject of all loves flowing within the four-position foundation, which is established when its members have completed the three-object purpose through the dynamic love for each other. Without God's love, there is no way to establish the true four-position foundation. Without God's love, there is no way for us to fulfill the purpose for which we were created. Love is truly the source and wellspring of our life and happiness. Although God created human beings based on the principle, He governs us through love. Accordingly, in order for love to fulfill its proper role, its power must be stronger than the power of the principle. If the power of love were weaker than the power of the principle, God could not govern human beings through love. Rather, we would pursue the principle more than the love of God. For this reason, Jesus tried to raise His disciples with the truth, but it was His love that saved them. 3.2. Why God set up the commandment as an object of faith. Why did God nurture the faith of Adam and Eve by giving them the commandment, "Do not eat of the fruit"? In their immature state, Adam and Eve could not be directly governed by God through love. Because the power of love is stronger than the power of the principle, God foresaw that if they ever formed a common base with the archangel, there was a possibility that they could succumb to the power of deviant, unprincipled love and fall. To prevent this, God gave Adam and Eve the commandment that forbade them from relating with the archangel in this way. No matter how powerful the unprincipled love of the archangel may be, had Adam and Eve adhered to God's commandment, forming a common base with God and engaging in give and take with Him and no other, the power of the archangel's unprincipled love would not have affected them, and they would have never fallen. Tragically, Adam and Eve did not obey the commandment, but formed a common base with the archangel and had give and take with him. Hence, the power of illicit love pushed them off the track. It was not only to prevent their fall that God gave them, immature human beings, the commandment. God also wanted them to enjoy dominion over the natural world, including the angels, by inheriting His creative nature. In order to inherit this creatorship, human beings should perfect themselves to their faith in the Word as their own portion of responsibility. God gave the commandment not to the archangel but only to the human beings. God wished to exalt the dignity of human beings as bestowed by the principle of creation, which entitled them to stand as God's children and govern even the angels. 3.3. The period during which the commandment was necessary. Was God's commandment not to eat of the fruit binding forever? God's second blessing was to be fulfilled when Adam and Eve entered God's direct dominion of love by joining as true husband and wife and bearing and raising children in God's love. Indeed, the principle mandates that human beings eat of the fruit once they reach full maturity of character. The power of love is stronger than the power of the principle. Had Adam and Eve reached perfection, become a godly husband and wife, and experienced God's direct governance by the absolute power of His love, their conjugal love would have become absolute. No person, no power in the universe could ever break that bond of love. At this point, Adam and Eve would never fall. There would have been no way that the love of the archangel, who is inferior to human beings, could ever have severed the conjugal love of Adam and Eve once it was grounded firmly in God. Accordingly, God's commandment, "Do not eat of the fruit," was binding upon Adam and Eve only while they were immature.